All right. Good evening, everybody. It is yet another episode of the GBL Podcast. It is March 16th, 9 o'clock sharp here for us on Eastern Time, 7 o'clock for some of us here in Central. And before we begin, I do want to kick us all off with an exclusive sound preview of an upcoming theme song for one of the most familiar stages of Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, actually. This is as of yet unreleased. We're going to go ahead and take a quick look at it, and then we'll go ahead and play it one more time before we end the broadcast. So without further ado, feel free to listen to the Warzone 2020 theme song. All right, and with that, we can start an actual proper introduction. Well, of course, my name is Shibarizu. You can follow me here on Twitch. We stream every Monday at 9 o'clock Eastern, and then these podcast episodes are available every Wednesday. You can follow me on Twitter, and of course, I got my co-host here, Aliens. Say hello.
What's going on, everyone?
All right, Aliens, and we got Protodad. Protodad, say hello.
Hey, how's it going, everybody, this evening?
And I'm super stoked to have a special guest tonight that I've been meaning to pick the brain of for a little while. From Enway Games, you might be familiar with his soundtrack work in Battle for the Grid. Tony Porter. Tony, say hello.
Hey, how's it going there? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir. Now,
Fantastic.
Excellent. Yeah, we've actually been discussing seeing if we could get you on the show for a little while now, and I'm super stoked actually to have some unreleased audio for the game. I don't know. What did you guys think of it? I know you guys had a chance to hear it before.
I'm a big fan personally. It's very Power Rangers, very much Power Rangers, and I think it really brings the energy of the game and of the universe really to a new level. But yeah, I really like
think it's really high energy. It's really explosive. It reminded me a lot of the SPD stage as well. Like this booming guitar track over the sounds. I personally really like it. That's only just a sample. It's going to be longer in the future, so if you guys are interested, as soon as it's available in the game, it's going to have even more. So that's just a little sneak peek of what's coming. So Tony, tell us a little bit about yourself for people who might not be familiar. Where do you come from before doing this?
Well, this is my first. I've been doing game audio for, now 15 years, 14, 15 years. I moved here to Florida in 2003, 2004 to go to school. I went to Full Sail. And from there, I just started picking up gigs started off doing student games, then went on to doing indie games, and went on to doing crazy little casual PC games. Finally on to doing DS stuff. I worked on a lot of DS titles and 3DS titles to up all through the hardware of the early 2000s into the early 2010s. And I've worked on titles as, I've done mostly mobile titles before this. A lot of I don't want to say ports, because we actually did a really good job of not just shoving a big game onto a mobile handheld, but so we did like the Call of Duty series.
Yes.
I worked on Tron. I worked on the Tron when the movie came out recently. I worked on that title. We worked on the console title and the DS title. I did the soundtrack for the DS version of that one. Right before this game, I worked on a big D&D game called the Sword Coast Legends. I've
heard of that.
It kind of came out. Yeah, it kind of came out, and it kind of, I don't want to say flopped. There's a lot of kind of stuff that kind of went on with it, but it was one of those things that, I don't know, it resonated with a good amount of D&D players, but it's D&D players, like any kind of fan base, and I see echoes of this one as we go through making games for Power Ranger fans, is that when they have a fan base that's so kind of dedicated to the premise of a franchise and the story that means so much to them, it's very, very hard to kind of tread left or right of something without ruining someone's impression of it. So, and that's the case with working on any kind of franchise stuff. But outside of that, I did some work for EA. I did work on NBA 2K so not 2K, NBA, whatever their version of NBA.
Yeah.
For 2018, and I don't know. I was just kept busy. Sometimes work in studio, sometimes work freelance. But I've been working the last 3-4 years for Enway. Started off working on their Legacy Wars on the Power Rangers mobile title, up to now working on this thing, doing everything for them: sound design, music composition, voice acting, integration, all that stuff.
All right. It's actually interesting. Yeah, I noticed that I looked at your portfolio on your website, and you called out a lot of things. But I noticed that you're, at least from my first glance, it doesn't look like you've done fighting games before this. Actually,
no, yeah,
not at all. Right?
Have not.
Now,
So
I
do
do
that.
think the closest thing, actually, and I wanted to ask you, what's up with Ultimate Alliance 2 on your portfolio? What did you have to do with that?
Right. So we did we worked on Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. That was one of my kind of first titles that I started on. But I didn't get a chance to do any music with that. But I did do a lot of sound design for both the DS and the console version of that title. And it was at that point, this was again like my second title. I think my first one was a Star Wars game, and so just jumping on like your first games are these big franchises, where you're again dealing with a lot of favorite characters. And at that time, Marvel, the whole cinematic universe hadn't really exploded like it was, but still people knew. I mean, well, I'll rephrase that. Fans of the comics knew that was a very, very kind of a special thing to have everything together and to ultimately leading to like Avengers and stuff like that. So the fact that these characters kind of cross-pollinated themselves across storylines and games and other media was God, that was so fun to work on. That was such a blast to work on characters that you had grown up with,
Yeah, actually, I
so
think
yeah,
that's
it
kind
was
of a
a lot of
very
fun.
overarching thing with your history. Actually, I mean, now you're working on Power Rangers, which is obviously a
Mhm.
huge, very well respected series of
Right.
sequences. Right, there are certain things that people feel must be retained in the franchise. You nailed it on the head with the D&D stuff at the very beginning. I mean, these
Mhm.
fan bases that you have to design for, they're very particular, and especially in audio, where you're gonna hear a lot of the same things many times in your playthroughs. You do have to be authentic, and you do have to really hit the nail on it. You can't half it, because you're going to hear it. Everybody's going to hear it, right? So I think
yeah.
that's actually super interesting. Now tell me this: when you guys, well, you were brought on board to work on Legacy Wars, I assume, first.
Mhm. Yeah.
And at that point, I Legacy Wars is very developed as a fighting game for mobile, but I think Battle for the Grid is a different beast. So when you started working on fighting game audio, as somebody who might not have been in that business entirely before, what were like some of the most biggest challenges that you started with?
Things that I would worry about, like you said, like a sound that plays over and over. I'd come from you basically create randomized pools of sounds of something you're going to hear over and over. You want to have variations of them, so you kind of worry about listener fatigue. And I had never studied fighting game audio before. I mean, you study it, you kind of play it, but I never realized that I was studying it. And I went back and listened and said, okay, this game sounds like this game does this game does that, and kind of break it down. Then I can kind of realize, well, how do I want my game to sound on top of that too? See, I wasn't really like forging new ground with what I was doing. I really kind of looked at just really what everyone else was kind of doing and see what's appropriate for this game. And that's always the big thing. What's the most appropriate thing for this game? The impact sounds in Legacy Wars sound different than they do in Battle for the Grid, because it's a different feedback gameplay loop. We want you to be doing different things in that game versus what you want to hear in this game. So the things I learned from that were one, the source is always your Bible. Going to the TV show and listening to that, watching that, what they're doing, that's always the answer. And there is kind of like sometimes you want a little bit of freedom, saying, "Oh man, I wish I could do something like this," or "I wish I want to try some of this," and then you submit it to whoever the IP owner is, and they say, "No, you can't do it. That's not this brand. You got to stay on brand." But then at the same time, you have problems sometimes, like, well, what is this going to do? Like, oh, well, what do they do in the TV show? Or what do they do at the end of the movie? What is it? And so you have these kind of things to plug in. And the thing that you find out about that is that when you use that stuff, when you pay attention, the fans pay attention. They hear that, they see that, and they're like, that is exactly that. Drew that connection to what I remember as a kid growing up, seeing that, hearing him say this, whatever it was that made that connection to them, we're bridging that connection again too. So it is a super important thing to stay on brand. And yeah, because of, I guess I'd worked on so many franchises before, understanding that you got to stay true to the brand, and you got to, you can, they give you some lever, some leeway to kind of play around with, but you have to be hitting these marks because that's what the brand is. It means something to different people. And some things are way too important to them that when they see it and they hear it, they're like, wait a minute, he didn't sound like that. He never did that. And they call you on it. And that's been a really, at least for me, helpful to realize that, one, I ignored something that was important to someone else because I thought, it's fine. This should do. This sounds fine. It sounds great. This other game did it like this. But in episode 14 of season 12, he actually used like this kind of gun, and it's had this different sound. I'm like, oh man. And if I had just taken the time to research that, I would have come with that answer too. So I like the fact that the answers are there, and then we can kind of blur the lines a little bit to make sure that it fits the game. I mean, it's always a tough thing, again, going between fan service and making a quality game. Some of the moves we take completely from the show. Some of the moves are, obviously we take a little bit of license with the license, as it were.
Yeah.
But again, that's always in the service of the game. And as long as we keep the show, the source, as the focus, then it's kind of hard to stray. And I think that we've gotten closer and closer to that as we've been, like since launch, certainly, moving closer to things that we do, the way that things look, the way that things sound, the voice clips that we use. The characters say a lot more stuff than they used to. All the launch characters had about 30 or so lines. All throughout, and the new one, like Quantum, had like upwards of 60, and and so the characters are getting complex. The play style is getting more complex, and we pay attention to what people react to, and they react to when they see those things, when they hear them saying these things, when it feels much more closer to it, then they react better to it, and so that's the direction we're going to go in. If we do any more characters, those characters are going to follow that same kind of thing, probably even more so. We're always looking for like more ways to kind of shove more content in, get something in that I say when someone makes, again, like a connection to thing, like just even like the Mimi stuff that Quantum does.
Yeah, like that everyone loves. Everybody attaches to it just immediately.
Yeah, that stuff's fun to put in. We're laughing our asses off putting in like they're gonna get this, and then there's some like deeper cuts that we get in there because I watch the show. I watch, if we're doing a character, I watch the show for that character, and I will write down everything that he says, and I'll look through here. Okay, what makes sense? What's going to work here? And it could be just some really random thing that he says, but he said it in this scene, and then it comes out and everyone's like, okay, that's fine. And there's like one comment in the middle of like 1,000 that says, yes, he said the thing. And I'm like, yes, I did it just for that dude. And that's fine because it's, it all fits. That's I don't know. That's fun to me. to again make that connection.
Yeah, that's really awesome because I mean, I think I used to do game design myself, and it's always approach it, what's going to make people happy,
Yeah.
and with a property like Power Rangers, hitting that balance between cheese and action and
Right.
all the callbacks to the nostalgia, it's very very difficult, and I think you guys absolutely did a fantastic job. Did you guys have any different approaches when you were approaching the sound design for the story mode cutscenes as opposed to the in-game, like the versus mode audio? Or
So the cutscenes themselves were handled by a different team that helped us create those videos, essentially outsourced. So I didn't do anything to them other than kind of manage the voice lines that we had recorded to put in there. So that was a little bit more of I want to say cinematic approach, just because they were totally cut scenes, what's like a cut scene, but they were cut as a scene from start to finish with ambience and music cue that scored into the thing, and so all that stuff was actually done by a different team, a video team that we worked with, that we all worked with to create, but. A team like Enway is that you have to be flexible because they are small, so they have to know how to shrink and how to grow at the right time. And I think they've been doing it pretty well in terms of like people that we bring on to help and people that we entities that we work with. And it's all about I was about to use the word synergy, but I loathe that word. But that's essentially what it is, just getting everything together.
Now you did mention that when you came out and had to start learning about fighting game audio design, you noticed that this was being done elsewhere, right? And you just had to do what was out there. What did you have, like an inspiration? Is there anything you really studied in detail to kind of get to where you are now, or?
Well, before, the games that I played, I totally missed the boat on like the Marvel versus Capcom games. And so when I saw them at first, I thought they were too spastic for me. I was such a Third Strike snob that's like what I played. At Full Sail, we had a Third Strike cabinet in the break room, and my office was a little, like a converted janitor's room inside the break room. So I was already there locked in with it, and so I totally just absorbed that game. Not just breaks, but just anytime I had a moment to think, I would just step up, and if I had a partner there in the room that day, he would step up and we'd play, and I played way too much of the game. So definitely got definitely that was kind of at least my and still is just one of my favorite games ever. And then of course, like everyone else, when Street Fighter 4 came out, fell into that. Didn't jump in too much to Street Fighter 5, but that's an interesting one to follow, right? So those ones from the beginning were kind of like my basis for it, and the sound of, let's say, Legacy Wars probably has a little bit more of a traditional kind of fighting game kind of sound, and then that's just based on my experience from those two games, from Third Strike and 4. But when we started Battle for the Grid, I had to kind of undo a little bit of that as we were, as I saw the combat develop and as I saw the pace at what it was doing. It didn't make sense anymore for it to sound that way. I needed a different way to kind of manage the essential chaos that you're wielding with your teams, and that's what games like Marvel versus Capcom did brilliantly. And so I had to not only listen and pay attention to a lot of that, but trust our designers. I mean, working with Clock and Shady, they told me kind of like, hey, what if you try it like this? Because they do it like this over here. Let me show you a clip. And they show me a clip of something like, oh, that makes sense. Why don't our impacts do that? Why don't we have an announcer that says, the combos? Why don't we? I had to lean on them a lot to kind of make this work better for that style of game, because I think the game would have sounded like okay, but I don't think it would have sounded as dynamic. I don't think it would have felt as impactful, and again, closer both to the show and closer to the style of game and that is. And obviously we borrowed a lot of ideas from MVC. So I had to learn to trust them a lot. It's stuff especially like the repeating voices. You say it over and over and over. Like that was, to me, that's like, no, you don't do that.
Right? But
if you press a button and then the guy says power up, and you press it again, and he says power up, and you press it again, he says like, can we randomize it, or maybe include some chances like where he wouldn't play every once in a while, because I think the player's going to get, he's not going to want to hear that, and the big tone of no, just stick it in there, let it ride. If it doubles over itself, that's fine. It's okay if it sounds a little, over the top, because that is what it is. We're shooting for over the top, and so having them say, one, ridiculous catchphrases, but two, the repetition in it. That, to me, as a sound designer, we're so scared of that. We don't want to fatigue the listener. The worst thing in the world is them say, I don't want to hear that, I'm going to turn that down, and then you're off the map entirely. So keep them engaged, keep the feedback loop going, make the sound good, make them want to hear those sounds, make the character part of the sound, make it not just like, oh, did you hear when you have the volume up, he says funny stuff. Like, yeah, but it actually, I mean, it's useful feedback for both players to hear this stuff. When Quantum says quantum divide, you know what's coming up.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen.
So those kind of things are super important, and the tone, I think we're getting much closer to what we wanted to do, like at launch. I mean, launch was there was a lot of stuff like across the board that we wanted to get in there that wasn't like ready for launch. But I don't know. I'd say that where we are now, even if like they say like we gave us more time to work on it for launch, I feel like where we are now, especially with the feedback that we get from the community, which is really the other half of this, we would be in a much better place having that information from the community than just if we had that much time by ourselves.
Absolutely.
To iterate, to have a public QA, as it were.
No, but that's much more acceptable now than it was previously. And I mean, the thing about fighting game like sound effects and things like that is that it is an information game, right? Like we don't get tired of hearing the same thing over and over again, because it's something that has to be conveyed to us, and we need it to be reliable. So that's one of those interesting things that it's interesting to hear how you have to break all the rules, right? Sometimes when you're working on a fighting game. Especially, I hear about this. Everybody I talk to, who works in the field of fighting games, we keep hearing these interesting stories, right? Where they have to go back and break everything they know. They have to say, okay, well, the graphics can't look like this. The netcode can't work like that. The audio definitely can't sound like that. And we have to just reinvent from a very primitive level the very basis of the game design that we're all kind of used to in every other game, versus, now we're making a fighting game. Things have to change, and they have to change very majorly. So, I mean, it's super interesting. You did mention, now this actually was brought up on Twitter. Somebody overlaid the game Battle for the Grid's sound effects and abilities over the show to see how close it was. I believe you had commented on it a little while after. Do you shoot for that level of authenticity? Because it sounds really similar. I mean, you guys can go look up his Twitter account. You can see where he comments on it. It sounds really similar. I mean,
yeah, it's funny because when I watch it, what someone did is basically take the gameplay footage, mostly like supers and stuff, but some combat things as well, and then overlaid it with show audio taken directly from there, overlaid it as if we had done that with the show. And although I could tell that it was the show audio and not my stuff, it all felt right. And I guess that's the tricky thing, is like, even if it sounds like, it was a little bit different, or this was a little bit louder, or had a little weird little pitchy sound in there that he didn't quite put in there, it felt right. And so here, seeing that laid on top of each other like that, I don't know, that felt good to me, because it was totally a target to hit things. I mean, especially if we're gonna take things 1-to-1, visually, like Zio's Super, Pyramidas comes out, like there's so much footage of that to get wrong. I mean, sorry, that there shouldn't have any reason to get it wrong. Rather, that there's no way you shouldn't get it exactly right. If they're going to cut away, show the pyramid, powering up like that and everything, it should sound and certainly feel the same way. I did change it a little bit just because of our timing was different.
Yeah.
But yeah, stuff like that was it was definitely a target to make it sound like that as much as possible. Like back when we added the
you doing like a homebrew, it wasn't like I mean, I always wonder. I don't know if you guys consult with anyone who worked on these toku or sentai scenes or anything like that. Like if you guys have been able to kind of consult the people who make these kinds of fights possible.
I don't. I guess I can only speak from my circumstances in that I did glean some information talking to some of the voice actors here and there about stuff. Not that I was really asking them for that. They would just they love talking about the show, and would say, "Oh, this sounded like that, and that sounded like this," and that's cool. But no, I really just loaded up clips and just watched them over and over, and so while we didn't have like anything like assets from the show, as it were, I mean everything was obviously approved through by Hasbro, who of course owns the show now.
Yes.
So. No, I don't. If some of the visual artists or animators or whatever got access to anyone specifically working on the show, you'd have to ask them, I guess. Yeah, I don't know, but on my end, for the most part, it was just I have to be inspired by what I see visually. So if they changed it from the original source, I got to follow that. But no, luckily, again, we had great source stuff to work with. I would say that every once in a while. If I listen to something, I'm like, what did that sound like in the show? And I pull it up, I'm like, that's okay, but I wonder if there's something any better. And then I check out like the Sentai version of it. And I mean, that's a whole different like
it's a whole different ball game
avenue, I guess you can talk about like in terms of like the two ideas coming together. But just again, and I wouldn't like copy those things, but I would listen to it, and sometimes that sound, the quality of sound, kind of made more sense for the game. There's nothing ever like overt, but again, when I'm thinking about like, well, where am I going to get a better idea for this kind of sound? Sometimes I would put it in the game, and someone would say, "Hey, you know what? The Sentai version sounded a lot more interesting than that." Like, oh yeah, and I'd listen to it, like, oh okay. I mean, it's still, again, it's 100% Power Rangers based, but there's no denying the link.
Yeah,
between the two ideas. So
no, but that's interesting actually. To find answers and things like that, because yeah, there are substantial differences, but even more than you talk about fan base, even more so, people recognize those things. People pick up on the fact that these things are coming from specific scenes and even specific versions of the show, right? So you do all the audio, you do all the sound. Obviously, everything we hear here comes from your masterwork. But what about Daishi? How did this begin, right? Like, because Daishi, I don't think he has like very much of an actor associated with him. So he's kind of his original voice, and you did all the voices for Daishi, for anyone who's not aware.
I did.
Like, how did that start? I think our audio got disconnected.
Yeah, I've lost him too.
Tony, we can't hear you.
Yeah. I can't hear him right now either, no.
Yeah.
Give him a second.
It's always technical difficulties.
It's technical difficulties. I don't think Tony's aware. Let me talk to him.
You might need to enter, leave and come back if anything, yeah.
Maybe DM him actually, just to let him
know. Yeah, I'm actually just quick opinion while we're getting him reset up. I really like how he did Daishi's voice. I think it matches, again, very very on brand. I can still it's associated, like, for me, I only know Daishi from Battle for the Grid, really. So like, this is what I associate his voice with now.
There's not like a situation like, there's not like a Johnny Young Bosch or,
No.
there's not like a voice that you're very familiar with, and you're gonna immediately pick up. It has to sound this way. It has to be like, because Daishi is almost like one of the monsters, right, from the show.
Yeah, he really is.
He's not like a ranger.
All right, I think I'm back
there
here.
we go.
Yeah, welcome back.
I don't know what happened there. I think my computer must have went on like some sleep mode, and then it turns off. I'm using my studio mic, so it's routed a different way. It screwed me over on a Google Hangout before too. Anyway, what were we talking about? Power Rangers?
Yeah, Daishi. We were talking about Daishi.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
So you did all the voices for Daishi. How did that begin? Like how did you end up in that position?
Oh, okay. So I've always been able to do some voices for almost all the games that I've been in, but it's just usually a thing or two here and there. I think most sound designers end up doing something for it, like combat grunts or whatever. Uh-huh. But I have a past history in doing acting in the live theater, and I've always been able to do big evil voices, and wizards and dark spells and things like that. I've always been able to do that kind of voice, and so those are usually, I guess, they're just kind of my go-tos as well. Like in Dungeons and Dragons, I did a lot of evil kind of dragon characters and that kind of stuff, just because one, super fun, and two, my voice fit for it. So I knew that I wanted to do something for Battle for the Grid, but it was a matter of just kind of like waiting around to see when a character would work. And in the beginning, we weren't it was a bit of a question mark if we were going to have voices in the game kind of at all. That's a little bit why, like, if you ever see like the launch trailer, there's like different voices in there. And day one had some kind of different kind of sounds there and stuff. It had more to do with the timing of everything in general. But we did get clearance to get like the voice actors in there and everything, and obviously that worked really well. And so with that, we had to wait. When a character comes up, we reach out and we see, is the original actor available? Is your director, do they have interest in the thing? And if not, then it's something that we need to source elsewhere through any other connections or whatnot. And most of the characters have been done that way. And so when this one came around, I was kind of, again, I would have deferred to if anyone had shown up from the original actor, if he had or whatever, let him do it, obviously. But I definitely wanted to do this one voice because, again, I love doing that kind of dark, evil voice. And when I had watched the character, it was both. It sounded a little bit like they just kind of like took the guy's voice and just pitched it down a little bit, so there wasn't a whole lot of like demonic inflections and stuff with it. So I went a little bit over the top with some of the. With some of the portrayal of him on a little bit on purpose. I can do a normal very deep voice that comes out, but then I pitched it down just a little bit more, so just enough to get it a little bit out, like just a little bit darker, I guess, for him. To me, that is the kind of character that I do. And so I really wanted to do that character. That's just, I mean, I do a lot of different voices. I did the voice of Ninjor in Legacy Wars as the only voice character in that game. I did that one, and it's a much different voice. Yeah, I do that. I do that sound, and then I pitch it up a little bit, So none of them ever really kind of sound like me. But
I love Ninjor.
yeah. No, when I heard it, I thought, no, they're not kidding, right? And I was still learning about Power Rangers at the time because I totally missed out on it as a kid. And but obviously a big fan now, and I've watched everything. And when I saw that character, I'm like, I knew everything was silly, but come on, he really sounds like amazing. That.
Yeah.
But he's an amazing character, and so I pushed them to include that. I said, look, this is part of this character. None of our other characters talk. There's 60 or so characters, whatever. They don't say a dang thing. This one needs to. This one should. And I'm not saying I can do the voice. I'm not saying. I just know he has to. So I don't know if we could find someone. And then I did just some demos of it, and I found out, yeah, I can kind of do that voice, and it worked out, I think, pretty well in the game. And so, yeah, doing when Daishi was announced, I said, okay, I had my heart set on doing it from the beginning. Again, if the actor showed up, or if they want to pick someone else, that's them, and I would defer to that. But when it opened up to say, hey, we got to figure out who Daishi is, I'm like, I want to do that one.
I want to do the voice. No, yeah, but
yeah.
It's you definitely sell the part. I mean, just hearing you do it, it sounds extremely similar, and it does sound like just you doing the voice. I'm like, yeah, with a little change in pitch, that sounds exactly like Daishi. I hear it completely, even just hearing you just do it straight into your microphone. Now I do know you're kind of running out of time, so I do want to say,
oh, that's right.
Yeah. Now, just like as a random piece, I don't know if is there any role that maybe people are not familiar with, like. Is there like a obscure character that you did that maybe people don't really call out and something very popular or something like that? Like, what is something that you're like, hey, I did that, you know?
There was, if you're familiar with the game Subnautica?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a character on there that pilots the Sunbeam. His name is, oh man, I'm going to forget the name. Avery Quinn.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly what part of the game. I believe this happens kind of like in the beginning and throughout. It's this character that talks to you. It's like one of the only characters that talks to you, and you're picking up all these logs, and then he's going to come and rescue you. And you show up to these coordinates on the planet, and then he shows up, and apparently this big building is not a building. It transforms into this big gun and then blows them out of the sky. And apparently it's like, oh, sorry, spoilers. Apparently it's like this, it's like this big spoilery kind of thing. Like I've watched a video of like reactions of this character dying. And when my like daughters find out, when my daughter's friends find out that I did that character, they're like, "Oh, I played a mod where you came back to life. Are you going to do voices for me again?" Like, I had no idea. So I go look around and like, yeah, I've got a wiki page on it and everything too. I liked the game. I played it a little bit, but I never really jumped into it, and I never played the part where I died. But that was apparently a very big thing to some people.
All right.
That's actually hilarious because my brother-in-law, I'm pretty sure, is downstairs playing it right now. He loves that game, and he also graduated from Full Sail. Funny enough.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a small world.
Oh, there's a lot of us around here. A lot of them came to the school to jump into something else, and then a lot of them ended up staying here for one reason or another. I'm from California, and I went there just to go to school to get my degree in recording and then go back to California, but I stayed here because I kept getting jobs, kept on making kids, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, those things that happen, you know.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, Tony, so I don't know if you have anything else to say. Super glad to have you on the show. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, I probably could. You probably could tell I could talk about stuff a lot. I think the last podcast I was on, they had to edit it just because I kept on, I don't know, saying stuff and talking about things because
that's evil.
I do get excited about the projects that I'm on. Whatever I'm involved in, I try to, you drink the Kool-Aid. And so I'm drinking the Power Ranger Kool-Aid, and I'm really, really stoked to be part of that team putting together this game, and I can't wait to show you guys what we've got coming up next.
Right. Man, I'm so excited, and I just want to say I really appreciate the passion you and everybody else at Inway has put into the game. That means the world to me, and I'm excited to share this game with the world still going forward.
Yeah, moving forward.
Yeah, I believe so.
So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, for sure.
All right,
thanks.
Tony, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I know you got places to be. So thank you, sir. And,
we have to head out.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Have a good night.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Thanks for everyone for listening.
All right, and before we move on to the rest of the news, actually, we're going to go ahead and talk about, we're going to go ahead and play the soundtrack one more time. So this is going to be Warzone 2020. It's going to be an updated track for the Hardwood Warzone stage and Battle for the Grid. I'm going to let you guys hear it one more time before we keep going. And after that, we're going to be talking about COVID-19 a little bit more, Xbox Series X, and some new stuff like Resident Evil 3 and the Nintendo Indie World expectations that we have. So let's take one more listen. All right, and back to us. That's going to be again Tony Porter from Menway Games, working on Battle for the Grid and other things like that. So if you're interested in keeping up with him, tporter64 on Twitter and tonyporter.com, tony-porter.com for his portfolio. Now, the story that we initially picked up on last week was actually just the story of COVID-19 and the FGC. So last time that we talked about this, we talked about a lot of stops being canceled. We talked about how some majors were handling it better than others. We were talking about how a lot of companies were rushing to kind of adjust their major esports leagues to kind of talk about it. And then we started hearing stories, right? People started coming out and talking about the chaos that was going on behind just the mad dash to try to accommodate people and their events and make sure the show could even go on, or if it was even possible to, right? I do want to take a minute to first I want to thank everybody who works in esports organization who might be listening to this. Some of the things I've been reading, and unfortunately on this episode we've not been able to bring you a guest regarding this. As soon as I'm able to, I'm going to. I will tell you this. As soon as we can have somebody talk to you guys about it in detail, we will. One of the things that really pained me was reading posts from people just expressing sheer frustration with the way they were being treated as organizers. The things that they were reading, the fact that one of the Michigan Masters staff said that they were just scared to even talk to people for fear of all the bad news that they were getting, and just more and more people coming after them and leaving negative impressions on their work, right? That they've been doing with so much passion. So anyone listening who's been involved in those processes, thank you, first of all. I think that you've all been doing amazing work. The FGC wouldn't be what it is without you guys. I understand that there are tolls that are going to be taken for communities of video gaming, right? It doesn't have to be fighting games. It can be anything. There's going to be a lot of hard times, right? Hopefully, those are the only hard times you guys have to go through, right? Because we are talking about something a lot bigger than this. But, yeah, there's been a lot of stories about companies that have been able to, or organizations that have been able to pull through, and then there's been some stories of organizations that have not. Like Michigan Masters, who mentioned that they're no longer going to be running events ever. That is the last time they're ever doing it. So yeah, that's really rough for them. There is kind of a difficult situation specifically for fighting games, because all of these events are booked well in advance by people that have to travel very far because they're part of many different world tour stops. Now, some of the things that I were reading from people who might not be familiar is that people were wondering, well, why isn't there insurance claims in place for these people, right? Why didn't they just pay insurance so that when these kind of things happen, they don't have to be financially responsible for something that's completely out of their control? And that's a valid concern, but the problem is this, and this was the problem with CEO Dreamland this past weekend. Thankfully, CEO Dreamland went well. Thankfully, Alex Shibeli was able to announce that they're going to be able to move forward with their events, so I'm super glad to hear that, because CEO is where a lot of us a lot of us are from that area, so it's good to hear that they're going to be back.
And that's very, very good for me to hear too, because Shibeli is one of the most community-minded people that I have ever met in my life. That man single-handedly saved Battle for the Grid CEO Taku last year.
Yes.
But yeah, it's been rough. It's been affecting a lot of events on national levels, and to kind of put it in perspective, these events, these majors, like speaking just from a Smash background, to run one costs upwards of 6 digits. Like, these I've seen TOs of major events talking about how much these tournaments cost to run on Twitter, and it's just absurd.
Yeah,
it is absurd. And Shibeli, being the community-minded guy that he is, offered for anybody who was uncomfortable going to the event, offered full refunds, and he's still working on that, getting all those refunds. So it's
important to to address that, because there's a misconception that I was getting at regarding people who are saying, why aren't these things handled better in these sort of situations? Why isn't there insurance? Why isn't there backup? The thing is, right, I want to take a minute.
Left field, man.
It's not even that, right? There's nothing in Orlando's government that says that these events have to shut down yet. At the time of CEO Dreamland, there was no policy being made saying that these events could not go on, right? So they can't call their insurance providers. They can't invoke clauses related to pandemics. They just can't, because there's no reason that they're not able to put on the show, right? That it's unsuccessful is not their fault, right? So they can't be, the insurance company can't step in and be liable for it. That's the situation. What happened is that Jabali said that when this thing started coming out and people started getting scared of traveling, their registration dropped from about 1,600 to 600 people. So they lost 1,000 entrants in the course of a couple of days. That's money that they need to count on, because these guys do projections. They look at, they say, okay, well, we can afford this much because we know that people are going to register for this month, usually, right? To have that swept under the rug so suddenly, while the event has no reason to cancel, right? One of the concerns was that Final Round 2020 was going to basically be running on empty. Thankfully, the government of that area stepped in and said, cancel all these events, so they were able to go to their insurance providers. They are not going to face the risk, right? Thankfully, that's happened. But for CEO, that was not going to happen. It didn't look like that was going to be the case, and it ended up not happening, right? They didn't stop the event from running or anything like that. So they had to just take the full financial cost. So the next time that you see, that criticism that why weren't these things ready for, situations like this, they are. The problem is that most of their guests are coming from outside of the state, They're afraid. Right. But in Florida, at the time of writing, at the time of them planning, there was no situation that required events to be canceled. Right? That's the difference. That doesn't happen in like other major leagues, because other major leagues in like League of Legends, Overwatch, Counter-Strike, these things are funded by marketing departments, right? They can be moved, they can be put somewhere else, they can be rejected, they can be taken out of the budget. This is managed by large companies, but this is handled by a team of players like me and you, right? Especially for things like CEO. So I do think it's important to remember stuff like that when you're discussing the toll being taken, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember Jabali was saying, like, if he canceled this event, he was going bankrupt.
Yeah.
And that was that. That was CEO, one of the most celebrated and enjoyed fighting game tournament series on the planet, just gone. Just in the matter of a day. Yeah, just gone. And it's affecting not only the top tournaments as well, but it's also affecting a lot of local events as well. I know I'm located here in Tampa. Our FGC events are done until this is over. Yeah, we're looking at probably at least 1 to 2 months of no events whatsoever. I know a lot of scenes are trying to move to a more online setting, for better or for worse, depending on the game. But yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, even local events are still are kaput too. It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. So I mean, I think that I'm happy to hear the CEO was able to go through. I'm happy to hear the final round was not forced to close on their own liability. I'm very heartbroken actually to hear some of the situations that have been going on, especially with the people at Michigan Masters. If any of them are listening, thank you. Thank you for all the work you've been doing. And this is not going to end anytime soon. So I'm glad. But this is the first wave of casualty, I think. Unfortunately, this is now we're at a stage where future events are up in the air, right? Immediately, people were saying, "What's going to happen with Evo?" Right? I think know. Evo is a little far off to really say anything right now.
Yeah, August.
A little far off. I think we can have the discussion again maybe a month from now.
Yeah, I was to say we'll probably know by like April or May at least.
Yeah, we'll probably know if anything's going to happen. They've said they have no plans to change anything regarding this. So I'm sure they're monitoring the situation, but now locals and major stops and stuff like that. NorCal regionals, April Annihilation, they've all canceled well in advance. I've heard from other sources that they ran one more event and then postponed indefinitely. I know FGC Fight Club out in Atlanta, shout out to them, they did like one session when this thing was breaking out, and then that was it, and they're suspending for further notice. So, I hope that now we're in a situation where the grassroots events are now able to kind of look ahead and say, maybe we shouldn't be doing this for a little while. But now the question becomes, what about online tournaments? And I saw that Ronin Rumble had 140 people in their bracket for Grand Blue Versus this past weekend.
Wow.
Yeah. I know WNF out in California is going to do an online edition for their tournaments as well. I know that a lot of people are looking at online tournament options. I don't think the skill set for tournament running translates necessarily 1-to-1. I think it's a different beast in a couple of ways.
Yeah, it is. I actually ran online tournaments starting with Brawl.
Yes.
I started doing that in 09. Mm-hmm. We ran TO Pro, and I would upload racket pictures to TinyPic. That is how we ran things these days. And at least modern online tournaments, they're still a pain. Like, I actually just finished running a Smash Brothers tournament last Friday online, and I did that through Smash GG, and I'm organizing a Florida local, like a Tampa only online tournament, because we had like 5 weekly tournaments. So I'm kind of stepping up, and I'm putting this online edition out there for us to run, and hopefully have minimal lag for Smash Bros. Ultimate. But that's actually where I learned, because I've TO'd offline and online, but I got my start online and moved to offline, and they each have their own different challenges, but I wouldn't say the skill set doesn't necessarily transfer over.
Oh yeah, no, there's some level of organization. But I think that now people are forced to contend with situations like using Smash GG, relying on self-reporting, the quirks of some of the lobby systems that some of the games out right now have. Like, we're dealing with Arc System Works lobbies. We're dealing with Power Rangers has a bit of a finicky lobby. Battle arenas for Smash Bros. Yeah, now we're dealing with all these challenges.
Code, baby.
Yeah, these crazy situations that people have been saying for a long time now. Roll back netcode, guys. Functional lobby, guys. Please do it. And now more than ever, we need those things. This is why, right? So we're going to be monitoring the situation. I'm not surprised if we're going to have this discussion next week, the week after that. I don't even know at this point.
It's going to be a while, man. It'll be a while.
It's going to be a while. So I want to talk about. Go ahead.
I want to say something. I want people to get perspective, right? I mean, for those of you probably listening right now, and of course later on, if you're a sports fan, you need to see what they're doing over there. For example, if you're an NBA fan, NBA, they're considering perhaps starting the season maybe 2 months from now again.
Yes.
Right? So that puts us in May, June.
Yes.
So think about that. If that's something that they're looking to consider, you need to take what you see at face value. So they're probably predicting that everything might be back to normal by May or June, the earliest. For example, in New York, they're canceling school until April 20th, and that's the first. And April 20th isn't exactly when they're going to start it again. April 20th is when they're going to attempt to open the schools again.
To review the situation.
So that doesn't mean it's going to happen exactly. So this could be something that could be going on for the next 2 or 3 months, right? So you just gotta look at it as a very delicate situation. I mean, yeah, everybody wants to be able to go to these events, but right now it's just more important to perhaps have social distancing and protecting each other, right? Because we have to be responsible for each other, right? You don't need anybody to tell you not to go here or not to go there, whether it's your local government or federal government. You should just look at the situation at hand and be like, okay, I'm not going to go, right? Because even though you may be young and you may not have symptoms, that doesn't mean you can't be a carrier.
There is a major issue. That started changing people's perspective. They were saying,
what if you have older people in your home?
Yeah, there's a lot, a lot of times you're not doing it just, to keep you healthy. You're doing it to keep other people healthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So, like I said, we're going to be having this discussion next week, the week after that, and I don't know for how long. And we're probably going to hear
for a
more
while,
things as it
for
goes on.
sure.
So let's talk about something that came up actually today at the time of the recording. Microsoft formally unveiled the full specifications of the Xbox Series X. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not the Series X was going to be a series, as if there was going to be multiple models. There's been rumors of a slim style model called the Lockhart internally, but we're not confirming anything about that just yet. We haven't been officially confirmed that they're planning on selling more than one. I think that's an eventuality, but maybe not on launch. So let's see. I think that this discussion about hardware specifications is nice and all, but I don't think it's terribly interesting. Just going down the list, they're using a they're going to be using Zen 2 cores at 3.8 gigahertz. So AMD, obviously, once again, a 12 T-flops GPU. There's been a lot of discussion about whether or not it was going to use a 12 T-flop GPU. So it is going to be in the 4K range. We're talking about something on par with about the 2080 or 2080 Super. On Nvidia's end, for perspective, this is going to be
ray tracing for sure.
This is going to be like a Navi type AMD hardware. So we're not talking about Nvidia, just to give you an equivalent, right? Because people are more familiar with that. This has 16 gigs of DDR6 memory, so it's going to be next generation memory. This thing's going to be expensive, guys. This memory is very expensive to produce and acquire at scale. And I'm not even done yet, right? The internal storage is going to be a 1 terabyte custom SSD using NVMe technology. NVMe's are significantly faster than SATA drives, the ones that you're familiar with from your hard drive on your computer or just in consoles in general. These are very expensive parts.
Those are the chips one, right? The ones that are big chip?
Yeah, these are the chip. They have their separate drives and readers. So we're talking about very expensive components. I'm not surprised that this is going to be expensive. Now, let's talk about storage, because I think one of the discussions was that Sony had laid down the gauntlet with the PS5 a little while back when they demoed Spider-Man for PS4 on a PS5 hardware with an SSD, and it loaded basically instantly, right? So what happens? What happens in that situation? They need to match that, so they also need to have SSDs. But Xbox is apparently offering a proprietary expansion slot for their SSDs. Apparently, they're so custom and so specific that you need to buy different kinds of SSDs that you can't plug into your computer, you can't plug into anything else. You can only plug into your Xbox. You can only use it for that. It's going to obviously have its own price tag, its own manufacturers, things like that. I think the one they demoed was being made by Seagate, and you're not able to use your own plug-and-play hard drive for any Xbox Series X games. Now, this is coming with an asterisk, apparently. You're able to use hard drives for Xbox One games that you're going to be using back compatible, because they have this pledge where all of your peripherals are going to be back compatible from your Xbox One to your Series X. So if you have a hard drive to play Xbox One games, you can use it. It's just that you're not going to be able to put new stuff on it. Or you can bring your Xbox One controller and it'll work fine. Apparently, the controller's gone through subtle changes for the Xbox Series X. I know, Proto, when I showed you it, you didn't like it. The new controller, it has like a strange D-pad design.
Yeah, I'm very picky on my D-pads. To the point where, like, I don't even, like, for fighting games, I don't even use my Switch Pro controller because I feel like the D-pad is bad.
Yeah.
It just looks uncomfortable.
It does look uncomfortable.
And, like, it's a shame because, like, I feel like the Xbox controller is just such a good controller, which is so very ergonomically comfortable and satisfying. The buttons all have a good response to them. I think the Xbox One sticks are a little bit thin for me. They feel very thin compared to the 360 controllers, but overall, it's always been a really good controller. And what was it? The Elite Edition that actually had a decent D-pad on it, wasn't it?
Yes, the Elite Series.
Something like that, yeah. Because I've always just used them as PC controllers. But I'm also one of those weird people. I was never really bothered by the 360 D-pad. It wasn't ideal, but I thought it was a little weird too. But I don't know. I made it work.
Yeah, a lot of people made it work. That was where you were playing Street Fighter 4 back then, stuff like that.
Different strokes for different folks,
Yeah.
So I do want to. Apparently, the controller, it's mostly compatible with Xbox One X. Xbox One accessories, your chat pad, your headset. It's all going to work. You just plug it in. it's using AA batteries apparently, and I did not like that at first brush. And then immediately somebody replies to me on Twitter, no, but I like AA batteries. I like being able to replace them, and they won't die and internally, and I don't have to pay for a new controller. But I mean, apparently this is a preference thing. I didn't know people were still. I didn't know people still bought AA batteries consistently in 2020. Apparently everybody has rechargeable batteries except for me. I think it's.
I have a pack downstairs. So
yeah, apparently it's like super common, but I think it's weird. I kind of I like having a controller that just works out the box, not having to buy a battery pack, because I already know how they're going to do it. They're going to do it like they did in the 360. They're going to have your controller. Oh, but $30. Here's your plug and play kit with your cable and your battery pack. Now, thankfully, if you have a USB-C cable, it's going to work, unless they do something weird there that we don't know yet. Your USB-C cable will be the primary way of connecting the controller via wired. So, I guess ultimately it is just a preference thing. These things are minor details. I'm kind of surprised by the quick resume stuff that they revealed. They revealed that the Xbox Series X is going to be able to instantly pause the game at any point. Not like just while you're playing. It's going to hold it there for as long as you want. Apparently they say, they tested it and they left it there for up to a week, and eventually they resumed the game and it just started once again. So kind of like if you're familiar with like game emulation, you know that you can save the state and come back later and it'll be exactly the same. So you can do that apparently. I guess
they demoed that with Forza. Yeah, I saw that.
They had a Forza demo, they had an Ori demo, stuff
Hellblade.
like that. Yeah.
Cool.
So I mean, this is great. This kind of pleases a very specific crowd, I think, to have this information, because people have been discussing the specs of the Xbox Series X for a while. Is it going to be powerful enough? Is it going to do 4K at 60? Is it going to meet that target? Is it actually going to? But ultimately, this is a very enthusiast report that they've put out, and I'm looking forward to see what other games and stuff that they're willing to put out in the near future. I'm not totally sold on it. I'm interested in seeing if they add new things to the OS, like better sharing options, or better data management, or just things that they can put in the system that don't involve the hardware. Just using the hardware well is extremely important. So that's Xbox Series X. Let's also talk about something that came out today. We knew that there was going to be a Resident Evil 3 demo very soon, and it's actually coming out the 27th. Thursday.
I love it.
Was?
Yeah, the Resi 3 demo is
March
Thursday
19th.
The 19th.
Yeah, March 19th.
And then the demo, the open beta for Project Resistance is on the 27th.
Yes, so we're going to be able to play the multiplayer. I don't know if this is a full... Yeah, it's an open beta. I don't know if you have to pre-order to get it. I think you do. But it's going to be on... Steam, Xbox, and PS4. So if you want the Steam demo, you'll be able to get it, right? So you're gonna have a great time. And I mean, it's like right around the corner, right? Because there's a demo, and then the game comes out April 3rd.
I'm so excited.
I mean, it keeps people hooked on Resident Evil for 3 weeks, so
like it's coming out Thursday, and then not even 3 weeks, just boom,
Oh yeah. No, I will. You'll be seeing lots of runs of that demo on my stream.
Same here.
Because I love Resident Evil. I adore Resident Evil, and Jill is my girl.
Yes.
So I'm very excited for that. Hashtag Jill for Smash.
Let's go.
But I'm really excited. The demo's looking, it's the game looks really good. Nemesis looks super scary. Looks really just about anything you could want from a stalker type character. And I could not be more excited. I'm really stoked.
Yeah, it's going to be good, man. I mean, especially now that most people are going to be home due to what's going on.
Yeah,
scare the shit out of themselves with virus.
Hey,
stuff
I mean,
and,
I don't. Well, I don't want to put it that way, right? But no, what I'm saying is like, hey, now that most people are going to be home, right? Probably against their will, right? Because things are going to start getting locked down. I mean,
they're going to be able to have fun with this thing. And
it's like they've been saying, all this stuff going on is an introvert's, dream in a way, right? And it's unfortunate that we have to see it that way. But if you're going to be home and you have a gaming system, right, a current gen console, right, then definitely go ahead and check it out. I mean, you're going to have time to check it out, and you'll enjoy yourself at least. That's what I think. And
yeah.
I just hope that they don't have that one-shot demo thing. I actually hope
please don't do that again.
That they let us really explore the game.
Yeah, please.
Right? So I think they will, especially now that you have to go ahead and shoot those little statuettes, right, for Mr. Charlie. So I think that you probably will have to, right, be able to replay it over and over again in case you want to go ahead and because I saw that it's 20 of them that are hidden. So I'm pretty sure that it's not going to be like the second one because, I mean, how many people are going to be able to find it in their first run and they don't know how long it's going to take, right? Because I think the last one was, 15 minutes?
It's about 30 minutes. Yeah, 30 minutes.
It was 30 minutes,
I think
right?
they said it was going to be more of a little longer, actually. I think I heard somewhere that it was going to be a little bit of a longer demo and that there's going to be more to do. I hope so, right? That'd be great.
Yeah, but I'm excited just like Proto is, Resident Evil 2 demo was great. The game was great. So the fact that they're ready to hit us with the 1-2 combo, hey, I'm all for it, man.
All for it.
Yeah, and I mean, at least people are gonna have like just a nice string of good games to play. If they're stuck at home doing all the social distancing, you've got for your Nintendo people, you've got Animal Crossing coming out, which is just going to absorb every Switch owner's time. If they're into that kind of thing, because that's one of those games you just sink hours into, and then you've got Doom Eternal for everything but the Switch. That Switch version's coming later, which is going to be a great time. Then you've got Resident Evil. Yeah. That's all. Those two came on the same day, and then you've got Resident Evil 3 like a week and a half later, and then you've got FF7 remake.
FF7 coming out so soon. Doom Eternal.
If you didn't buy, hey, listen. If you already bought all your food for this potential quarantine, then maybe you might be able to treat yourself to some games. But if you haven't done that, go and do that first. You know what I'm saying?
Animal Crossing is out there too, so you've got options. Yeah. I don't know. It's so many things.
Yeah. Lots of stuff to do.
A lot of stuff to
keep you busy while you're home, for sure.
Speaking of Animal Crossing, well, not directly related to Animal Crossing, but to flip to the other side. There is a Nintendo Indie Showcase, Indie World, on the 17th, the same day as the demo coming out. So, first you get to have a happy indie game presentation, and then you get to play Resident Evil 3. But
a couple days before, Resident Evil's on the 19th.
Oh yeah, on the 19th, yeah.
Indie Direct is tomorrow, yeah.
It's gonna be the Indie Direct is tomorrow. So, expectations, I don't really have any expectations. They always kind of show things cool. I thought I kind of reserved my judgment because when they showed Cadence of Hyrule way back, I was like, yo, this is cool. This is so cool. Like, this you sold me on this idea of this indie thing completely. This is a very cool game, and I played it and I had fun, and it's an amazing game. So it's very, I'm sure we're gonna get something refreshing, whatever it is.
Yeah, they usually do.
A couple of rumor mill things I heard is that Void Bastards is rated by the ESRB to go to Switch, so maybe there's a reveal there. Co-op shooter set on a spaceship, so if you're interested in stuff like that, tune in tomorrow. And then I heard, people were expecting that this isn't basis in any reality of Hollow Knight Silksong to get some more information because they've been showing up in a lot of these directs. So who knows, right?
Okay.
It'd be nice, right? But I'm going to reserve my judgment. I'm sure I'm going to be surprised by something interesting, but I think Indie World more than Direct has a lot less expectations going on. But I think the expectation now is when's the Nintendo Direct, right? And people keep saying sooner than later, but I don't know who to believe. So
so there was a rumor that came out very recently that this guy was like, okay, but approximately on the 18th. There's going to be an indie showcase, and then approximately on the 26th, they are planning to go ahead with a full Nintendo Direct.
Yeah, that's what I had heard, that there was going to be one like a week later.
Yeah, so this is kind of adding credit to that rumor.
Yeah, credit.
Credit to the rumor. The rumor came out.
Yeah. So I hear about these things like every single day. So like when I see there's going to be a Direct next week, I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you keep saying that, it's going to end up being true. So
eventually,
at one point you'll be right.
At some point you're going to be right, and everybody's going to think you're a genius. But hey, I look forward to seeing what comes out, and I know that Aliens, you're playing Doom Eternal on Friday.
I mean, as you guys already told me, it's Bethesda launcher, but as long as there's no BS going on, yes, I will be streaming it very likely on this Twitch channel, right? Gotta Be Legend, and then of course the footage will be on our official YouTube channel. So yeah, that's the plan, definitely. And of course the day before I'll be doing the same with the Resident Evil 3 demo, but the plan is that, God willing, that'd be the plan. Doom Eternal. Get your guns ready. It's going to be a blast. And, next week we'll definitely have more to talk about because we'll be able to actually talk about what we experience, So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to
yeah, I'm hoping I get to. I'm hoping I get the time to play it, but I'm right. Animal Crossing is coming out that day, and that is the game that we have elected to purchase as a family. So I'll have a lot to say as well about the much softer side of things.
Yeah, the much less violent,
much less violent
gaming. No, that's
so
that's gonna be great. I look forward to kind of talking about a lot of the releases as they come out because we're gonna be, we're finally there. People have been saying, oh God, this time of the year is gonna be full of releases, and we're actually pretty much a week away from that kicking off, right? We're gonna get RE3 demo, Doom Eternal, Animal Crossing, Final Fantasy 7. One thing, tell me.
Halo 2.
Halo 2. I didn't talk about that. Halo 2 is going into testing next month, so we're probably gonna get it next month as well. You know how it is.
Or is it this month? I think it's this month, isn't it? At the end of this month?
I don't know. I saw they said soon. I heard sometime very soon. End of March.
They said end of March is what they're shooting for.
Yeah, so we got a lot to talk about. I'm sure we're gonna be talking about Halo 2 as soon as.
Hey, I hope we get into the flight, man. Both you and I, man, and Proto also.
I mean, I was salty at first because I didn't get it, and then it came out like a week later, so they can take their sweet time. I'm sure I'm gonna have plenty to do. If they want to pass me a key, I'll play, but I'm gonna be playing with everyone else when it comes out as well. So, definitely catch me there. I think that kind of wraps it up for this episode. Again, twitch.tv/Shibarizu. You can follow me on Twitter as well. You can go ahead and follow us on YouTube at Gotta Be Legend, youtube.com/Gotta Be Legend. And you'll be able to catch on our podcast on my Twitch stream every Monday at 9 o'clock Eastern, or on Wednesdays when we upload them later in high quality. Again, that's been us. Aliens, you got anything to say?
Doom Eternal, Friday, Thursday, Resident Evil 3, COVID-19 now. Don't sleep. And hopefully we get that Halo 2 soon, man. Seriously, I hope to play it this month if that's the case. And maybe next show we might have some more details. So stay safe out there, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other and be smart.
Protodad, you got anything to say?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Tune in, you can catch me at twitch.tv/Protodad's Dojo. Stream Smash fighting games, Switch fighting games, Switch games, I'm the Nintendo guy. And then you can also, follow me on Twitter at Protodad Plays.
Yes, sir. Protodad Plays.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Much appreciated.
All right, guys. That's going to be it from us for this episode of the podcast.